What is up, everybody? It is I, Ronin, and today we are learning how to play the new archetype Tenyi. So, if you don't know what Tenyi are, they are an archetype revealed fairly recently. I think they're coming to the TCG pretty soon. Not 100% sure on that. I'll have to double check. But basically, their whole thing is using non-effect monsters to greater advantage. Now, anyone who has watched the channel before, well, at specific times, I guess, knows that I like me some non-effect monsters and just some generally unorthodox win conditions, I guess. And I consider this one, so I gave it a try. Actually, a pretty good deck. So, real fast, let's just do the deck profile, then we can get right into things. So, first, the common effect for the Tenyi main deck monsters. One, they all have effects that say as long as you control a face-up non-effect monster, you can banish them from your hand or graveyard to do something. The baby dragons, besides Idhara, are all reactionary type stuff, and the big dragons are there for consistency boosting and removal of the opponent's board. So we'll go over the big ones, then the little ones, then Idhara. So the big ones are Ajna and Vishuddha. They can all they can special summon themselves so long as you don't control any effect monsters. That is on all the Tenyi main deck monsters. Should mention that. And Ajna lets you banishes itself from hand or graveyard to special summon another Tenyi monster from your deck. And Vishuddha is able to bounce a monster on or bounce a card on your opponent's field back by banishing itself from hand or graveyard. So these are kind of the big boys. They help you extend, they make the deck slightly more consistent, and it's good to run them because the deck, weirdly enough, doesn't have too many types of just aggressive removal, so definitely nice to have. Now we will move into the little dragons, which is Nahata, Menura, and Sfafa, or Sfana. Sfana. It's Sfana. So Nahata, when a non-effect monster battles, whatever monster it is battling, you can banish from hand or graveyard to force it to lose 1500 attack and defense till the end of the turn. Menura, when a non-effect monster is targeted by a effect, it banishes itself from hand or graveyard to negate that effect and destroy whatever did it. And Sfana, when non-effect monsters are destroyed by battle or card effect of a opponent's card, then you can banish it from hand or graveyard, revive one of those normal monsters, assuming there was more than one, and pop a monster on their field. Now, all these effects, they do target. I will mention that. So anything that gets around targeting kind of sucks for us. And I'm not really going over the stats so much because these matter more for their effects than anything else. And lastly, we have Idhara, the lowest level of the Tenyi dragons. It's also a tuner, so for the synchro monster, which we'll go over in a second here. By banishing it from hand or graveyard while you control a non-effect monster, you can take a banished worm and add it back to your hand. So this is just very good resource recursion. It's an extender. It lets you get protection effects back, mostly Sfana, because it's pretty much the best of the baby dragons. But yeah, Idhara is a good worm. A good worm. Now for spell traps, we'll start by going over the Tenyi cards first. We have free copies of Hollow of Dragon Chakra. One second. Sorry, my mic was a little bit off. But what it does is it lets you send one worm monster from your deck to the graveyard, and then if you control a face-up non-effect monster, you can add a Tenyi monster from your deck to your hand. So it's pretty good. It's Rhoda plus graveyard setup, so it can get you the pieces you need to get into your big boy. It can get, while giving you protection, it can give you extra protection if you're already at the big boy. It's a great card, does wonders for the deck if you can draw it. Then we also have 2 terraforming to search the field spell, Tenyi Wubing Stance. It makes all face-up non-effective monsters on the field unaffected by monster effects, considering that as our large lad here is a non-effect monster. It's very good. And once per turn, when your opponent special summons a effect monster or monsters, you get to draw 2 cards. So it keeps up the hand trappiness of your deck. It protects your big boy. It's it's never a bad thing to see it, pretty much. Beyond that, though, it's just kind of generic support stuff. We have Foolish Burial because Graveyard Setup holds a lot of value in this deck. Uh, World Legacy, World Legacy Succession. We have a lot of downward facing arrows, and this is primarily a link climb strategy. So any other ways we can or any other way we can go about doing that, always going to be a good thing. And we have Called by the 2 copies of Sacred Sword 7 stars. Sorry about that. Gonna go over this first. Because these are both level 7s, and we can get our boys back with Hara. You can honestly run it at 2 or 3. The deck's genuinely consistent enough on its own, so if you want to run something else, you can. I just kind of like having the extra draw power, just in case. And now we have Called by the Grave, because this deck does rely a lot on searching, a lot on effect activation, mostly with Immortal Dragon, the Immortal Dragon out of the Tenyi lady. So it's good to be able to protect that vital sort of choke point of the strategy. And lastly, we have some traps with free Waterfall of Dragon Souls and free Tenyi Wushuang Strike. So the Dragonfall of Water Soul, or the Waterfall of Dragon Souls, sorry, on activation lets you add a worm from your deck to your hand, so it lets us search a hand trap if we need it. And Wushuang Strike, it gives us it's a Omni Negate so long as you control a non-effect monster, and if it is destroyed by an opponent's card effect, you can special summon 1 non-effect monster from your extra deck, which for us is many. So yeah, generally speaking, the main deck is used as a tool to get to the extra deck, which we'll go over right now, real fast. So we have free Warrior Monk of Tenyi, link 1 worm with a straight downward facing arrow, requiring 1 non-link Tenyi monster. So any of our boys, you can special summon them if you have an open field, you can get to your monk. Then we have free 2 land Valinkus as a alternative for a non-effect monster if we notice our opponent is playing a lot of monster effect negation. You can go into this assuming you have a third Tenyi in your hand. You will be able to get to the big boy. Then we have free Dragon Immortal of Tenyi, and this is a card that's very good, but also very scary, because if it gets shut down, your plays a lot of the time will get very much shut down too. So, what it is, it requires 2 worm monsters. You can discard a card, then target a worm monster in your graveyard to special summon it, and you cannot activate monster effects from the extra deck for the rest of the turn except for Tenyi monsters, and we don't have any activated effects that are not Tenyi monsters, so that restriction doesn't really apply to us. And when a non-effect monster battles, you can destroy 1 card on the field. So it's a very good way, if you can keep it out, to to do some spot removal, just clear out the board. This does target though, so be careful. Everything in here targets. That's kind of the unfortunate thing. And lastly, we have the big boy himself, Fierce Ogre of Tenyi. It's a link free that requires 2 or more monsters, including a link monster. So Land Palinkus does work for this. Tenyis, all the other Tenyis. If you can open 2 Tenyi dragons, assuming your opponent isn't able to stop the Immortal, then generally speaking, you will be able to get to him pretty easily. And lastly, we have the Synchro Monster, Dragon Ogre Deity of Tenyi. It's a generic level 8, and when your opponent activates a monster effect as a quick effect, you can banish that monster. And when this destroys a monster by battle, it will gain that monster's attack points and then can attack monsters again. So it does not get 2 attacks. That is a kind of a misconception I've heard about it. It does not get just 2 attacks. It has to attack monsters. So keep that in mind. However, honestly, it's not super good in this deck. Generally speaking, you just want the big boy on your field or other non-effect monsters. Maybe a Immortal if you feel like it. But yeah, generally speaking, unless you want to go out of your way, it's not necessary to run this, and you can really run anything else in these spots. But yeah, beyond that, we have extra deck stuff. So over the staples first, we are running 2 Humongous, mostly because it is also a level 7, so we can put it in for Sacred Sword 7 stars. 1 extra Manera if our opponent is using a lot of targeting effects, like say in a mirror match, and it's better to have this over like a Nahata or something. We were running 2 Super Poly as well as the Guard Dragon Fusion and the Quintet Magician. They are mostly for Endymion and Link spam decks, just because it is kind of nice to have that extra deck space. I'm not going to lie, is not very tight in this deck. You just kind of need your Tenyis and your Tenyi Links and you're good. So it is pretty easy to side out for that. Twin Twister, a little bit of Spell Trap removal, never hurt anyone. Heavy Storm Duster, or Heavy Storm Duster. Imperial Order, I've seen that sort of coming back a little bit. So it is definitely nice to have alternate forms of Spell Trap removal. Another Sacred Sword of 7 stars. If we really feel like we need to draw more, though, place whatever you want in this spot. And 1 Dark Hole, because fuck Mystic Mine and all of its cave shafts. But yeah, so that's the deck. The game plan is, generally speaking, summon Big Boy, protect Big Boy with everything else. And yeah, if you're new here, well, actually, even if you aren't new here, we're trying something a little bit different with this video as far as the learning how to play goes. I got some very, very helpful constructive criticism lately. I can't think of off the top of my head who sent me this, but you know, I very much appreciate it. So we are trying a little bit of a different format. I recorded a few games before this to show the deck working well, sort of the combos, and how it is in certain matchups. So we're going to be going over the replays, and I really do want to know how you guys feel about that, if you prefer it, or if not. We're still doing free replays, and I really do want to hear your thoughts on it, though, because if so, I could continue to do things like this. But yeah, with that being said, let's get right into the replays. Okay, on to the first replay. We were Ty Lee for this one because in Avatar: The Last Airbender, there was a character named Ty Lee, and her whole thing was blocking chi and ki and stuff. And all of the Tenyi dragons are actually based off of like chi points in the body. So a little bit of an interesting thing about that. So yeah, we are playing against Magical Muskets. That's actually opened fairly decently, but we did choose to go first here because you always want to go first with this deck because it's all about make Big Boy, protect Big Boy, then attack for game next turn. And we did open pretty well here, mostly because we opened up with a Tenyi monster. Well, I'll show you first. So this turn 1 play, pretty good. So main phase, first thing you gotta do, summon it, go into the Baby Monk, and then from there you get the extra effect of your Dragon Hollow. It is worth mentioning that you can only special summon the Tenyi dragons like that once per turn. So opening doubles generally isn't a good thing. So we do the Chakra, and here we added another Tenyi dragon. In this case I got Adhara to get sort of some effects back. I didn't realize what our opponent was playing, of course, but and we sent the Sphana to protect our monster at the end of the turn, assuming we get blown out, which we unfortunately do. But yeah, from there we just Link Climb. I wasn't sure what our opponent was playing, so I did opt to go ahead and use Ajna's effect to make it so I didn't have to use the Immortal Sage effect, because the Immortal Sage effect is, like I said, a major choke point. But yeah, from here we go into Mortal Sage, then we just go into Ogre. So here we've established one half of our win con. And the other half is this. So I know it looks bad, but going over what we have real fast, we have a protected non-effect monster, a Omni Negate, a special summon from deck for next turn. We also have a protection from targeting, a way to recur our resources when they're banished, and 1 protection from being destroyed. Well, more like recursion reinforced. So, honestly, not awful. Our opponent, though, he's playing like Magibullet Kaiju things. So he goes Twin Twisters. Honestly, I just went ahead and used it because, like, if I can hold on to the Wu-Bang stance, it's always good. Our opponent does last stand us, though, so we are going to lose both our spell traps here. So he gets a search, adding the crown so he can't be destroyed by card effects. So the Casper cannot be destroyed by card effects. Then he uses the Kaiju Slumber to give himself a Thunder King. And this is where cool stuff happens. See, because our non-effect monster was destroyed, Svanna activates, so we get to revive our Fierce Ogre, and we will also be able to pop the Lightning Kaiju here. So it's always a good thing to set up a Svanna. Always want to have that ready to go. So Svanna brings it back, we pop that. He does manage to re-summon the Star Destroyer though, so that's unfortunate. He does attack over our boy, which we cannot revive because all of their hand trap effects are also once per turn. And here we actually do have some trouble stabilizing because the Kaiju was not cleared off the board. And we have weird link arrows with Fierce Ogre. It has nowhere pointing sideways, so here we're just gonna stall for a little bit. He's searching another Kaiju. Attacks over the Gamma Seal, and from here we can start making plays because there are no longer effect monsters on the field. So we will be able to climb back into a big boy pretty easily. One thing this deck is great at, comebacks. So reviving that, and now we have double Dragon Sage. We probably could have gone for something else here. But now our Fierce Ogre is going to attack into that. The Dragon Sage is going to pop the Jizukiru. Replay occurs, so we get to keep going. So we went ahead and set the Dragon Souls. And at this point, I don't know why our opponent scooped. He could have... Actually, no, we saw his Svanna in the grave, so yeah, that would have been good. So yeah, basically, this deck protects itself. It bounces back super hard. And that was kind of the ideal opening hand. But I think we'll do a couple more replays, talk it out more, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Okay, welcome to Game 2, or Replay 2, and not as good as an opening hand, so we will be forced to use the Dragon Sage this game. But as long as you open 2 Tenyis, you are generally good. Like, watch. So you can discard a card, revive a worm, go into it, and you go ahead and you have the big boy. So... not terrible. We do have a negate. We have double destruction protection, so not as good. But we also have that to search a hand trap. Not that will matter since our opponent has an Ash, but yeah. So he's playing a Vision Hero thing. I go ahead and try to chain the hand trap. It does not work out because Ash. So the E is going to resolve, searching him a Solid Man. Another E will get him the Shadow Mist. And at this point is where I decided to Wu Shang Strike. Because if he could summon Shadow Mist, then he would be able to get a Mask Change spell, which would lead to Dark Claw, which is actually super detrimental. We do need the graveyard here. However, he is going to be able to continue to play, because Ferris is really good. He does have the Evil Hero for some reason, I'm not sure why, but okay. So yeah, he's doing standard hero stuff here, adding the Poly, going for the Dread, getting Adoration. He will be able to power us down here, attack over, so we're taking a hit. We get the Svanna effect to revive it, and then we pop the Adoration, effectively ending his turn. From here, it gets a little grindy, because again, with no sideways arrows, which is rough. However, we still are in a fairly good spot here, because we still have another Svanna, which will be able to pop the Dreadmaster. We can attack over the increase pretty easily. Still nothing really to stabilize with, but it is good to get the Called, which is actually going to be super hot here. So this is just a little bit of hero tech for you guys. Dark Calling, it's basically Miracle Fusion for evil heroes, and all of the evil heroes, to my knowledge, do require like a Fiend or a Dark Fusion. So we're going to go ahead and chain our Called by the Grave, hitting the evil hero Infernal Gainer, so the Dark Calling will hopefully fizzle. And yeah, from there you can't really do much. So here we can start playing again, actually, because we can re-link climb. It is extremely worth it to run multiples. So we have double big boys out. Dyna Tag comes down, blocks one attack, go in for another. Increase gets itself back. Then from here, he also scooped after getting the Fusion Destiny. I can only assume that he didn't have targets or a dominate guy just wouldn't be enough. But yeah, so this is just sort of the deck and its ability to make a pretty solid comeback. You really do need to have a monster to do so, though. So next game, I actually don't exactly remember what happened in that replay, so I guess we're gonna find out together. I'll see you guys there. Okay, and welcome to the final replay, where this is actually probably almost the best you could open. If this Hollow of the Dragon Chakra was like a cold, it would be amazing. But yeah, so we're playing against a warrior spam thing. I'm guessing it's heroic challengers, but oh well. So again, we are going first. So we're getting the summon, Spana, always a good. We went ahead and set up the Nahata in the graveyard this time, just to make sure we would have a little extra protection. We're getting a special summon our Manura. Manura gets us that. We're going to go ahead and get the Anja in the grave for a little bit of recovery. And so yeah, end of turn we have a Wushuang Strike, so that protects that. We have Anja for recovery next turn, protection by Manura, as well as a destruction save and a battle power down. That is actually all of our baby dragons, if you're not keeping track. So, pretty good opening here. Our opponent is going to try to make some plays here. But again, this deck is very good at sort of punishing these one-trick type decks, where it's just, you know, make a monster pass. We are going to get beat over because Heroic Chance, which is, by the way, actually kind of nuts card if you don't know what it is. But if we get to banish Svanna, and then we get our Fierce Ogre back, popping the Excalibur because it was going to be 4K body. We do have another Chakra, so we do get a search here. We go ahead and send the bounce so our plays can go through better, as well as getting Adhara, because in this game I actually did want to show off the Synchro monster. So we're going to go ahead, special summon level 7-1, make that. Adhara will get us back to Svanna. We'll attack with Ogre to get some more attack points, so big damage here. We are in a fairly good spot. So here he goes, he tried to activate a monster effect, so he's going to banish it. The effect will still resolve, but because he is playing a Xyz heavy deck, it was value to not let him have 2 monsters on field. So he gets that in defense mode. From here, we are able to bounce, and we are going to try to attack for game. So yeah, he gets that back in hand, unfortunately. So at this point, we're just going to try to build a little bit of a better board here. So we are able to... So we linked away a Tenyi as well as the Ogre to summon that, and because the Synchro is a worm, we will be able to put Svanna or bounce Pashuta into the grave to bring it back, making a slightly more imposing board, I would say. And our opponent at this point just summons double ants. We pretty much have game on board, so we bounce it back, attack for game. Alright, so yeah. That's sort of that deck going off. Again, there were a few good bit more replays, I'm not going to lie to you, that were not as great, mostly because if you can shut down a mortal and you don't have like a succession, there's really not a lot of places for you to go with this deck. But yeah, I think the deck is... I think it's kind of cool. It spends a weird amount of time getting blown out, but I think its greatest strength really is its ability to recover from that type of thing, honestly. You really just need like a monster or two with different names, and you're like just good to go. But yeah, I don't know if I would buy this deck in real life. I think it's a very good deck. I think it's very interesting. Everything does target, which sucks, but all in all, perfectly fine deck. I just am not super comfortable with my own play style, I guess, just kind of to sort of protect the castle type decks, because this really is a protect the castle type deck, unfortunately. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. Could my build be better? And did you like this format of doing the learning how to plays? Because or if you did, how could I be better? Should I go back? I really want to know for you guys, because you know, want this to be as entertaining and just sort of instructional as possible. But yeah. That being said, like if you liked, comment if you have something to say, and subscribe if you want some more. This has been Ronin, signing off.